Friends, a good afternoon. Good afternoon. We're up to chapter 11, verse 5. And God has told Moshe. Moshe said that God said like around midnight, I'll go out in the land of Egypt. And then verse 5, every firstborn from the land of Egypt is going to die. Bechor Paro, Hayosheva Kiso, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits, on his chair, on his throne, Ad Bechor Shefcha, until the firstborn of the maid, Asher Achar Orechayim, after that behind the millstone, the Kol Bechor Be'ima, and every firstborn animal. Now, by the way, let me ask you a question. What about the firstborn girls?
They weren't allowed to live.
Yeah, but so were the firstborn animals.
Just the males.
Why did he say that?
Because I read the Rashi on it.
Okay, but it's actually a dispute amongst the commentaries. So not every Rashi, not every opinion is like that. And that's why there's a dispute whether or not the firstborn females are supposed to fast on Eve of Pesach. Some say because the implication is firstborn animals, so also firstborn females.
Not a great way to tie it.
All right, we got some people in rare form here today. All right, chapter 11, verse 5, Rashi says, Ad Abachor Ashvi, until the firstborn captive. Rashi says, Lamalaku Ashvuyim. What did the captives do? Why were they smitten by this plague? They didn't do anything wrong. Ad Abachor Ashvi, these are, I guess, the non-Jewish slaves. So Rashi explains, Kadesh lo Yomru Yerasam Tava El Bonam, so that they should not say that their pagan deity demanded satisfaction. Kadesh Yeratam Tava El Bonam Ve'via Piramios Al Mitzrayim. So they were worried that they were going to say that their gods are the ones who did it, and so therefore, since we didn't want the other gods to say that they were we didn't want anybody else claiming credit for the attack, so to speak. So therefore, we made sure that everybody knew it was the God of the Jews who did this attack. From the firstborn of Pharaoh to the firstborn of the slave woman. All those who were lesser than the firstborn of Pharaoh and greater than the firstborn of the slave woman. This includes everybody. So why did they strike the firstborn of the maids? So this is a second explanation why the children of the slaves were afflicted, because they were also involved in the torture of the Jewish people, and they were also rejoicing at that aspect of it. She says, "V'chol bechor behema," and every firstborn animal. Why were the firstborn animals struck? Rashi says because they were worshiping the firstborn animals. When God takes and punishes the nations of the idolaters, he exacts punishments from its God. So it doesn't say here, Seth, that Rashi says that the women were not struck. Did you see that elsewhere?
Yeah.
Okay.
But my other question before we get there is, while I know the Torah refers to Ad Bechor Hashvi later in the Parsha, it doesn't actually refer to Ad Bechor Hashvi. It refers to his Shivcha in this. So why is Rashi addressing Hashvi in this Rashi when it doesn't actually say that in the Torah? I know later it says Ad
Okay,
Bechor
fine.
Hashvi.
No, that's a very good question. And that's why I really want to recommend this edition called the Saperstein edition, the ArtScroll edition of the Rashi, which has a footnote here asking exactly Sasson's question. And he says, although the phrase to be the firstborn of the captive appears later on in chapter 12, verse 29, as such a very close reading, rather than in our verse, Rashi comments on it here to explain an obvious difficulty. Given that the firstborn of the captives did in fact die, and given that the captives were of lowlier status than the slaves mentioned in our verse, why did Moshe not tell Paro from the firstborn of Pharaoh to the firstborn of the captive? So Rashi explains that the warning to Pharaoh, which is subject of this verse, pertained only to those guilty of mistreating Israel. The captives were punished for a different reason. So there were two, the ones in this verse were the ones who were punished for mistreatment, whereas the ones later on, they were punished for a second reason. That their reason was that they were so that they shouldn't be able to claim that it was our God who did the punishment. Yes, Jerry.
Yes, question about the beasts, the animals, the firstborn of the animals. Rashi says because these animals were worshipped by the Egyptians, but
Right.
the animals had no say in this. They were innocent victims of living in the land of Egypt, and they did not ask the Egyptians to worship them. Why were they? I don't understand why they were punished.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that I think anybody thought about that too much, but they were saying that they were worshipped to make a point that
Not worshipped. They were
struck down.
Yeah,
to make
struck
the
down.
point. Yeah, to make this point.
God's justice in the Torah is not always precise.
Well, no, what Rashi's saying here that the punishment is not always precise, but here, that's a fair point, Dan. But Rashi's saying here that the whole point is that he wanted to show that their gods, the purpose of this plague was to show that their gods were not powerful, and so therefore he struck down the animals. Follow that?
Oh, okay. All right. That's a good answer. Thank you.
Okay, now all the dog lovers, fasten your seatbelts now. You're gonna like this one. So, okay, so the next verse states, there was a great outcry in all the land of Egypt. There never was anything like it, and there shall never be again. Verse 7. Amongst all the children of Israel, no dog sharpened its tongue. From man to animal. Nobody basically barked in order that everybody should, so you should know that God will distinguish between Egypt and Israel. It's such a strange phrase, no dog barked. I don't even know there's another reference to a dogs in the Bible, which Rashi's about to say. But really now, we haven't seen dogs until now. We haven't seen a dog until now. All of a sudden, we're being told that the dogs in Egypt did not bark.
It must be important if they're in the Torah.
Very important. Rashi is going to show us why. Omar Nishu Lashon Shinun. Now, when it says the dog did not bark, it's sharpen its tongue. It means yecharatz means sharpening. Lo yecharatz, lo yishanein, well, not sharp. Rashi says, okay. Oh, Rashi does not explain it here. V'chein lo charatz of neitro isha l'shono. So Rashi here does not tell us the significance of this, but later on in the Torah, Rashi tells us why it says that if there's a carcass, you throw the meat to the carcass. It's because here the dogs didn't bark when we left Egypt. So as a reward, if there's a carcass, it says, do not eat it yourself. To the dog you shall cast it out. Okay. Yes.
It went against the dog's nature. Why do we have dogs altogether? Now it's a $70 billion industry, but back then it was only 7 billion. No. Back then it was basically they were guardians. They were guardians against invaders or thieves. Things coming into your territory, killing everybody. A dog would normally, its instinct is to alert and start barking and then start seeing who's causing this. And they went against their nature. Then so Barbanel says that not only didn't the dogs complain about this very, very traumatic act, but the Egyptians also held their tongue, so to speak, just like the dogs. They didn't say that, oh, why is God doing this incredibly horrible
Everybody
thing?
held their tongue.
Everybody.
Very nice. I'll tell you a story. One time my friend, Judah knows him. His name is Shmuel. I don't want to say his last name. One time he said to me, I was driving into New York and he says, I want to go to the sunrise prayer service. He gave me the key to his house. He says, come into my house and wake me up at like 4:30 so I could go to the prayer service. Then he's got 2 dogs at the entrance to his house, 2 dogs like sleeping there. I walked into his house at 4:30, a stranger. You think the dog said a word? Nope. The dogs were quiet, just like this Torah portion.
Wow.
Jerry, what's your question?
The question is sentence 7, where it says the dogs will not bark against a human being nor nor a beast. Let's go back. Would you please bring verse 7 back up again? Thank you. A dog shall not bark at any Israeli, human or beast. What did the this sentence is equating Israelites with dogs?
No, it says the dog will not. Oh, I see where no, not with dogs. It says the dog is not going to bark at a human or at an animal.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, the pasuk is equating Israelites with beasts.
It's saying it's not going to bark at anything. It's not equating them.
Their livestock is talking about, no? Like,
Yeah,
we're living with all the sheep and with all the cows.
It's not gonna bark. It's gonna be quiet.
Okay, so let's look at the end of that sentence. That you may know that God does not make a distinction between Egypt and Israel.
That God does distinguish between Egypt and Israel.
Now, that you may know that God makes a distinction between Egypt and Israel.
Yeah, the Rashi says, "Asher Yafla Yavdil," he will separate. Yeah. Okay. Did you have a question about that?
Well, the sentence doesn't make sense to me. Okay, let's go on.
All right. Verse 8. V'yardu ko avadecha, and then all your servants will come down. V'yardu ko avadecha, all these servants will come down to me. V'yardu ko avadecha elai v'shtachavu ilay more. They'll bow down to me, God says, saying, say atavacho amasher b'raglecha, or Moshe is saying, they'll come down to me and they will say, you go out and all the people that are at your feet, and then I'll go out. And Moshe went forth from Paro with anger. So basically, this is a Gemara we had recently in Rashi says, the Yardiko Avadecha, Cholak Kavod. Rashi says that God actually gave honor to Moses here. Cholak Kavod l'malchus. God gave honor to the kingdom. Shari Besof Yarad Paro Ba'atzmo. In the end, actually, Pharaoh found Moses in the middle of the night. He said, get up and lead my people. Moshe did not tell him from the outset. Moshe didn't tell him from the outset, you'll come down. So Moshe was giving honor to Pharaoh by not saying, in the end, you're going to become groveling to me like a peasant. He gave you. So from here, the Gemara says that even if the king, I remember we did this stuff, Yomi, I don't want to say when I think I had maybe did a protest around then. And I was feeling a little guilty because they said, the Gemara says, even if you don't like the king, you're not supposed to be disrespectful. Oh my God. Okay. Whatever. I don't know. Asher baraglecha, until who are at your feet. Those who follow your advice. Moshe says, and then after that I will leave. I will leave with all your people from your land. Moshe left Pharaoh. When he finished what he had to say, he left him. With anger. Rashi says, he said, I don't want to see your face again. So Rashi's saying that Moshe is the one who's angry. It's a question here. Who's the one who's angry? Is Moshe the one who's angry, or is Paro the one who's angry? So Rashi says here that Moshe is the one who's angry. Rashi says here that Moshe is the one who's angry. Okay, so. Okay, so now we go to the next verse. Vayomer Hashem Moshe, and God says to Moshe, Lo Yishma Alechem Paro. Paro will not listen to you. L'man Rabos Movsai Be'eretz Mitzrayim, in order to increase my signs and wonders in the land of Egypt. Rashi says, Moftei Shenayim Rabos Shalosha Makas Becharos Kriyas Yamsuf Unaer Mitzrayim. So there's how many more plagues? Isn't there just one more plague? The plague of the firstborn. So Rashi says, no, Mofsai is 2. Rabos is 3. There's the plague of the firstborn. There's the splitting of the sea. And also the stirring of the Egyptians in the sea. So there's 3 more plagues, Rashi says. Verse 10. Yeah, because they were tossed around and they were tossed around all over the place in the sea.
The plague is a wonder.
Right, as a wonder. Correct. Yes, correct. Accurate.
Would it be a tremendous stretch?
Yeah.
A very, very bad stretch to say that Moshe was angry at Pharaoh because he grew up in that court. That was his life. That was his whole youth. I mean, that's his childhood, his adolescence. His education, everything was there.
Yeah.
And now he's watching them all die, all because of the stubbornness of this fool.
Yeah.
And then he's angry. He says, well, why couldn't you just see that I was telling the truth all along, and now you're causing this great tragedy? And he's angry because some of them must have been his pals. I mean, they were. He grew up in that. That was his.
That's
entourage.
very interesting explanation. That's why Moshe was angry. Yeah, that's a very, very interesting explanation.
He's watching his whole childhood.
It says you're ruining my friends. You're ruining my buddies. I like that a lot. Thank you, Meyer. Very novel. I think those substances on the farm we were at yesterday had a good influence on you. Okay, Nathan. Yes.
I was just going to go back to the question earlier about why were the children and the animals punished, and my idea is that slave societies don't operate in a vacuum or only on the basis of certain individuals. In order for a slave society, I've also seen this in my studies of slavery in the United States, is that in order for slave societies to successfully function, the whole society has to a certain degree. Now, the degrees to which certain aspects of society are invested can vary, but to whatever degree, but to varying degrees, every society has to be invested.
It's a beautiful.
It has to be an investment by all of society, something that all of society has some investment in.
Yeah.
And also, even if somebody's not actively participating.
But the animals?
Well, I'm talking about the humans. Even if they're not actively participating, they're benefiting, and they don't seem to have a problem with benefiting.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
That is Goldhausen's theory in Germany. He says that it wasn't the Nazis, it wasn't the Gestapo. He said it was the whole society.
Yeah.
Was so deeply immersed.
Yeah.
And even there, the parallel is so uncanny because you have the dogs, the German shepherds. They were used to intimidate. They were the first line when they get off the train to the outfit.
Yeah.
They sick the dogs on them.
Nice.
You don't do that unless you're endangering the people. And they said they just did this to terrorize them.
Yeah. Very good point.
Dogs were part of the whole.
Yeah, it's a good point.
This whole regimen of terror.
Ben, Nathan's great. You're great. And Ben, did you were you
Oh,
try?
no, I apologize. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I was just thinking if there's a book called Hitler's Willing Executioners.
Yeah.
And I think it's to amplify.
Yeah.
That would go.
Yeah. I remember when that came out. It was a big. I was in graduate school in Jewish studies at the time when the book came out, and people were like, "No." It was like, it's not true. And I'm thinking, what? Of course, it's like the most obvious point in the history of the world. And people were arguing it. Okay.
Well, the Germans, they were protesting.
Yeah, they didn't like it.
Well,
So,
I can't, I'm sorry, but just before we move on.
yeah.
We didn't talk about Sherlock Holmes. And I have to wonder whether Sherlock Holmes, the dog that didn't bark.
What dog that didn't bark?
There's a famous Sherlock Holmes story involving a dog. It's about a horse theft, I believe. And it's about a dog that doesn't bark when some intruders come. So I just wonder whether I'll have to do some research and see whether Conan Doyle had any kind of biblical background.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was an absolute fraud and a very, he wrote, I mean, I like Sherlock Holmes too, but this man, do you know about Sir Arthur Conan Doyle? He was worse than that. He was a total fraud, and he and Houdini got into a major fight. If you read about Houdini's biography, Houdini was a very good Jew, and his father was a rabbi, and he was deeply influenced by Maimonides. And Arthur Conan Doyle was trying to trick Houdini that his mother was coming back to talk. Houdini was in a deep mourning for his mother, and Arthur Conan Doyle tried to trick Houdini. Like, can you imagine? It's like trying to beat LeBron James in a one-on-one. You know, like he tried to trick him at a seance, and Houdini tried to expose him. And Arthur Conan Doyle became a huge anti-Semite, was really nasty to Houdini. This is a terrible man. Seriously, look at biographies of him. But
His real name was Arthur Conan Santos.
really? No, but I'm a big fan of Sherlock Holmes too. It's a brilliant work. But I'm just saying, when you triggered me when you mentioned his name. No.
This is a footnote. It's totally tangential. That Houdini's whole library, which is probably the world's premier library on supernatural magic and magicians, he gave it all to the Library of Congress. And if you sign up, you have to sign in and register. They put a card on you. You can have access to it.
Yeah.
If you want to read up on, on Kabbalah and magic and everything else.
The reason why I read a few biographies of Houdini was because of our dear friend of blessed memory, Bradley Fields. He got me talking. He got me into Houdini studies. Houdini was somebody very special man. Okay, so now the verse states. So Moshe and Aaron asu et kol hamoktim. Moses and Aaron did all of these wonderful signs in front of Paro. Vayechazek Hashem et leiv Paro v'lo shilach et bnei Yisrael me'aretzo. And Hashem strengthened the heart of Paro, and he did not send the children of Israel out of his land. Yes, Reb Sasson.
What would the Torah say about Houdini putting his life in danger all the time unnecessarily?
So I think, okay, it's a very important point. I think that, first of all, I thought you were going to say something else. What would the Torah say about Houdini's magic? So Houdini was the one who said, everything I'm doing is not magical. He was very careful about that. He said, there's nothing supernatural here. Houdini was trying to debunk all the people like the Arthur Conan Doyle who were saying, oh, it's like the occult, the black magic. So that was very careful. Now,
he offered $1 million to anybody that says, anybody that brings me a ghost or any kind of
right. Houdini was, so life was like that. And the second thing that Houdini did was, he was an expert. So if you're an expert, then it's not a trick. But so if it wasn't dangerous for him. And to this day, we don't know like how Houdini died, but it seems like he died because somebody punched him, just came up to him when he wasn't aware of. But the point is, he never died during one of his escapades because he was an expert.
And punched him in his kidney, and he was already sick. He had an inflammation of his kidney, and the guy sucker punched him because because if anybody punched, like let's say you want somebody punch, you have to tighten up, and the guy came from behind.
Okay. So Rashi says. Yeah, Rashi says Moshe. Did I cut you off, Meyer? I didn't mean to. I'm sorry, Meyer.
No,
okay, fine. Moshe and Aaron, Moses and Aaron did it. What does it mean? Rashi says this has already been written. The Torah only writes it here to combine it to the next verse, which is now chapter 12, one of the most important chapters in the whole Bible. What?
Oh no, sorry. I learned that any magician must, by Allah, say it's not black magic, it's an illusion before he does everything. That's the Allah I learned.
And Houdini did this. His father was a rabbi, and he did this to be very careful. Houdini had a collection of Maimonidean manuscripts. If anybody wants to read a nice little easy biography, there's a biography in that series, Jewish Lives. There's a very sweet biography about Houdini there. You could probably read it on like Shabbos afternoon. You'll be good. Vayomer Hashem al Moshe ve'al Aaron be'eretz Mitzrayim. More, and Hashem said to Moshe and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying. Rashi says, why does he say it to Moshe and Aaron? Why is Aaron? Why doesn't he just speak to Moshe? Unusual here. Rashi says, Aaron asa v'tarach b'movsim k'Moshe, because Aaron carried out and exerted himself over the wonders, just like Moshe. Chalko kavod b'mitzvah b'mitzvah rishona. God gave him the honor of being mentioned with the first mitzvah. Sheklolo in Moshe Badibor, by including him with Moses when he spoke this first commandment in the Torah. This is the very first mitzvah in the Torah, which is the mitzvah, what we're about to say. Be'eretz Mitzrayim, and God spoke to Moses in the land of Egypt. By the way, this is so ironic that the first mitzvah was given in Egypt. Yeah, Jerry, you wanted to say something?
I thought it Peru Urvu is the first commandment.
That's a very, very important point to make. So the first mitzvah that was given to the Jewish people as a nation is the mitzvah of Chodesh Hazelachem, Rosh Chodesh. Peru Urvu was a commandment that was given prior the Jewish people being a nation, and it was then repeated afterwards, as is the mitzvah of circumcision. But the very first mitzvah given to the Jewish people as a nation, because prior to this we were not a nation, this is what made us a nation, is the mitzvah of Chodesh Hazelachem, Rosh Chodesh.
I thought we weren't Jews until we got the Torah.
No, so we were Jews in that we had to convert. We circumcised in Egypt at this point, and we didn't fully convert, but this is given to us as a nation. This is the beginning of our nationhood, accepting upon ourselves the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh.
That's free people.
Yeah.
We're not free yet. The first reference to Am B'nai Yisrael is from the beginning of Moses.
Of course.
Yeah, but we didn't get a mitzvah then.
No, but that was the
Yeah.
point is we became a nation in Egypt.
Yeah. So okay, let's look at this. Rashi be'eretz Mitzrayim in the land of Egypt, chutz l'krach, outside the city, or enu ela b'toch l'krach, or maybe it's inside the city. So Talmud Omar kitseisi esayir, when I will leave the city. Look at this beautiful Rashi. Just like Moshe would not pray a minor prayer inside the city. For sure, God would not speak to him like this. Why wouldn't God speak to him with inside the city? Because he was filled with idols. I'm just going to share. I'll stop the recording and I'll share a story with you that when we brought the Torah.